Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is exactly August 12th, 2023, and we're driving to Mammoth Cave National Park. Actually, we're driving to the Mammoth Cave National Park Lodge because they're having a big event on this particular day. They're bringing one of the old stagecoaches back to be displayed at the lodge. And I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to talk for just a couple of minutes, and then they had some speakers there that'll tell you all about the stagecoach and how it came about. Take note, though, the stagecoach is supposedly one that was robbed by Jesse James, which I think is very fascinating. And it has been restored. It was previously on display, I think, at the National Cave Museum. And then it was also at the Bowling Green Corvette Museum. Even some turkeys showed up for this presentation. I thought that was pretty cool. I always see deer, always see turkeys when I'm at Mammoth Cave. KET showed up. This was a pretty cool event, and it was really enjoyable hearing the superintendent talk. They also opened up the lodge. They've been doing reconstruction on the lodge, and a restoration, I guess you would say, and they opened it up because it was such a rainy day, so they let people come in here, and then they ended up having the whole presentation inside, and it was so nice being in here. If you go to Mammoth Cave a lot, you know this is just such a part of it, and it hasn't been a part of it for the last couple of years or last few times I've been here. That's where they were going to have the presentation, so you see the bugler, and anyway, they ended up moving everything inside, but it was a treat to get to take a look inside the lodge again. It felt right being there. Again, if you've been going to Mammoth Cave for years like me, you know, you always stop over at the lodge for lunch or to get some ice cream or to go through that other gift shop. Other news crews were here too. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking and let you just check out the stagecoach arriving, and then there'll be some speakers. But I was really glad to make it out here on this particular day. It was cool seeing the stagecoach come through. So let me know what you think.
There it is.
What is it, the stage?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you're able to.
Ladies and gentlemen! There you go. I'm not good at that. Superintendent is. But ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Mammoth Cave National Park Association, I welcome you today to the historic return of the McCoy Stagecoach to the Lodge at Mammoth Cave. Our arrival was announced by our bugler as it was done over 100 years ago. That was done to let the staff know that the Stagecoach was arriving at the Lodge. And as Julie said coming over, all hands on deck. Good. And a special thanks to our valet. Those folks were in period costume today, so we appreciate their being here with us. Our trip today was guided by our skillful drivers, Mr. Lanny Simmons, and the past president of the association, Mr. E. Lee Davis. Our passengers today, and although the park superintendent was invited, he chose not to ride with us today, and I'll let him off there. So we had Julie Hanson, retired chief guide Louis D. Cutler, Congressman Brett Guthrie, and myself, and I'll introduce myself as Mr. Troy Hanson would, the grandson of Willie Freeman, and I am the current president of the Park Association. This is indeed a historic day for Mammoth Cave, and to welcome everyone to Mammoth Cave is Park Superintendent Freeman.
How's everybody doing? Hey, special thanks to National Contracting Services right out of the gate for letting us get in this building, get out of the weather. So James and Hollis, thank you very much for what you all did to let us in this building today. So it's my great honor and privilege to welcome you to the park, but also to this historic event. I mean, as Mr. Bennell just talked about, the returning of the Stagecoach for over 100 years, coming back to its home, coming back to where it belongs. So we couldn't be happier and more proud to be part of this ceremony as we're moving forward and having the Stagecoach sitting in its, final resting place. Hopefully they don't take it out too many times for a spin, so we'll see. But I think, what's really important is we had these discussions with the association early on, and what you're looking at right here, this building was solely designed to take in this Stagecoach. You will see when it finally gets in its final resting place, but this back corner over here was designed, there's a window in the wall that you can look at it from the side to be able to observe it. So a lot of what this building has done is really to incorporate this piece of history. It's a cultural, historic object that we're looking forward to displaying in the park as we're moving forward. So I guess I'm going to be short because I know we've got others to follow, but I just wanted to start with a couple of thank yous. And that really is to all of the Mammoth Cave National Park Association members for loaning us this piece of history. But a big thanks to obviously Bobby and Greg and Lee. So thank you, gentlemen, for everything you did working through that. Greg, thank you. We'll get Lee in a minute. Lee's out getting wet right now. But we've had a lot of conversations, over many years to make this happen. So it really is, and it couldn't be done without the association. So thank you. Also, a big thanks to NCS. For one, cleaning up the parking lot. This is still an active construction zone, so they were gracious enough to let us in and clean up all the environment and get us in this area. And then also a big shout out to Explore US. And so when this building gets done, our concessionaire is going to be the operator of this building, and Mike has graciously agreed to allow us to store it in this building as well. So it really is a partnership on all ends. So Mike, thank you for that. And so with that, I'm going to get out of the way and just wanted to say that this is kind of a teaser event for you. You got to see the lobby, but when you're ready to come back and have some fried chicken and some ice cream, we're about 6 weeks away from being open, so we'll be happy to invite you back when we have the grand opening of the building and move forward with that. So with that, I'm going to invite the president of the association back to the mic, Mr. Bobby Bennell, and thank you very much. Yes,
Superintendent Trimble and his staff are to be complimented for their hard work and cooperation to make this a memorial event for everyone here today. His guidance and commitment to work with the Association for the Stagecoach to again be part of the history of Mammoth Cave has been unmeasurable. Again, thank you, Superintendent Barkley, and to your staff for your support. Without the support of the Hanson family, today would not have ever occurred. And it is my pleasure to introduce Julie Hanson to speak on behalf of the Hanson family.
Thank you for everyone to come out. Hospitality has been a significant part of the culture of this park. We have always welcomed visitors to share the splendor and the majesty of the cave, but also the land and her people. And in order to do that, transportation was absolutely essential to expand the reach of our cave to people all across the world. So from the earliest stage of the horse-drawn stagecoaches to today, we have welcomed visitors to our park and to share our heritage with them. So the Hanson family, like so many of the park families, have dedicated their lives to this cave and this park. 4 generations of the Hanson family have lived, worked, and participated in virtually every facet of its development. From cave exploration and discovery of new areas, to construction of the buildings above, and a lot of the construction inside the cave. We've been rangers, we've been guides, we've provided maintenance from the very first day that this was an actual national park. We've served the meals, provided the lodging, driven the buses, and some of us have even driven the ferry. We lobbied and advocated this family for the establishment, preservation, and for visitor access to this park. And we volunteered. So you name it, we've done it. I guess I should say we're 5 generations today because Mark volunteered and Jacob and Logan, you're next. So just putting you on notice. So when Gardner Hanson, my father, had the opportunity to acquire this piece of park history before us today, he just knew that we had to protect it, restore it, and share it with generations to come. So our family has just been humbled and honored to have the opportunity to partner with the Mammoth Cave National Park Association to bring this dream to a reality. So on behalf of our family, we want to extend our most heartfelt thanks to Lee Davis for his absolute tireless leadership of the association over the years. A big shout out to Greg Davis for lovingly protecting the stagecoach through every move and everything that had to happen to that. To Bobby and the rest of the board for their dedication, and the entire membership of the association for their dedication to this project. I also want to express my most sincere thanks and appreciation to Barkley Tremble, Molly Shear, and the entire park staff to help us bring this to reality. Their cooperation and assistance echo the very best tradition that I grew up with, where we talked about being a park family. And I want to thank you all for that. Special shout out to Mike Davis and Explore US for helping us create the design, the vision, and taking care of that. And then I hope you guys will all join me in giving a big hand. I want to do a special thank you and a shout out to Sarah Martin, who is our constant in park hospitality in this park. She has been with us as long as I can remember, and she is the one that brings all those traditions forward. And my husband said he would disown me if I didn't thank the horses. We are so pleased on the Hanson family's part to be a part in just bringing this part of park history back to the visitors and guests. We really think it's going to enhance their Mammoth Cave experience. So today is such a special day for the park as we're bringing our past into the future. But as you can see, we still have a lot more great days ahead of us, and we hope that each and every one of you will be here with us to share those milestones as well again. So thank you to everyone who's been involved, to every member of the Hanson family that came out today, and from this little girl who was so pleased to call this home, thank you to all of you.
Again, Julie, a special thank you and support from the Hanson family to make this day come to fruition. So, every project must have a leader, and the association was fortunate to have the right person to lead our efforts to restore the stagecoach. He took the idea, formed it into a viable project, and has seen to or been involved in every aspect related to the project. Greg is a past member of the concessionaire team here at Mammoth Cave and the past treasurer of our association. Everyone, Greg Davis.
The old saying that they say is, my dad has been abused and my mother would have believed every bit of that. You know, this historic day, the Stagecoach was the forerunner of our public transportation for those folks coming to visit Mammoth Cave. You know, we're told the stories of Jenny Lynn that came here by Stagecoach in 1851. Actually rode the coach on 31 East out to a little community called Barrawalla. And it is still, legend has it, and that stone is still there, that Jenny Lynn stepped off the Stagecoach there in Barrawalla, stepped on that stone and sang as she got out. From there, she come cross country over to a little community called Horsewell and to Woodland, Kentucky, and then of course on over here to Mammoth Cave. So, you know, quite the historic event. And you know, as you look over with some of the pods in the way, we can't see the Hercules train right now, nor certainly the steamboat has been gone for many years. All of those means of transportation were, of course, later replaced by the private automobile. On a little personal note, my first time to view the Stagecoach is about 55 years ago. I know I don't look like I'm that old, but 55 years ago, I was a snowball dining room attendant in the snowball dining room. Now, that was a heck of a title, but not a whole lot of money, Julie. At any rate, one day, one of the year-round people come to me and said, Greg, I need you to go with me. We're going up the top, which that was referred to in those days, and we're going to get some box lunches. For those of you who recall, we sold box lunches in the snowball dining room, and so the boxes were stored up in the warehouse. So as we entered that warehouse, I happened to notice over to my left, here were these wooden remnants that was kind of tough to make out what it exactly was. So upon looking at that, I asked the fellow, I said, what is this right here? And he said, well, this is a Stagecoach, and this is probably the one that Jesse James may have robbed. Well, my first thought was, my God, you know, what a piece of wonderful history that not only has deteriorated beyond recognition, but, you know, it's out here where nobody can see it. So I was very, very pleased whenever the Mammoth Cave National Park Association took on the project of renovating this Stagecoach. Just to hit on a little bit of a note, the Mammoth Cave National Park Association was actually formed 99 years ago for the purpose of buying up the land to create Mammoth Cave National Park. So, you know, I think a lot of us kind of get in the habit when we say that 600 families were displaced to create this national park. And you say it a few times and it starts rolling off your tongue very easy. But these were very real families with very real people. Growing up in the 1950s, I had the opportunity to know a lot of these people. And they had names like Adler, Blank, Bransford, Cutliff, Cooper, Davis, Dennison, Furlong, Fitzgeralds, Hanson, Holton, Meredith, Olam, Parsley, the Lees, and many, many more that are too numerous to tell today. But very real people, and they gave up so much. Not only was it a way of life that they had to give up whenever they bought their land was bought up, but probably the biggest sacrifice of all that you heard people talk about is that they had to give up their friends and family that they had known for generations. So I'm just hoping that those people, our ancestors of yesteryear, would look down on the Mammoth Cave National Park Association and this ceremony favorable today as we bring back this wonderful piece of history. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, and you and I have spent many hours together over the last year, and today, all of that hard work and determination has indeed created a memorial event. Thank you so much for your efforts.
We don't want to talk to each other for a month.
Or a month, 30 days. Our phone rang at 7:30 this morning. Our association is so fortunate to have one of its elder members, a person that was born and raised at Mammoth Cave, and then spent his working years continuing a family tradition as a guide at Mammoth Cave. Many of us are, or claim to be, cousins of our mentor, friend, and historian, Mr. Lewis Deco.
That's hard to follow. Spell some of my father, but that's okay. We're kin anyway. No, he said I was born and raised here at Mammoth Cave, and I was. If you turn around and look over there in the edge of the trees, I was born December the 3rd, 1931. The Dr. Carroll from Cave City rode a horse out here, spent the night, and he lived with me the next morning. I've been here ever since. And we had to leave, of course, when we became a park. But we were here until, I think I was 5 years old. But still I was here because all of my family from both sides of it worked here, lived here, along with many of your relatives. How many of you have or know of relatives that work at Mammoth Cave? A good bunch, right? So you know what I'm talking about. Many of them didn't want to leave. My mother never did. But they had to go. But they made the best of it, and they benefited from it. It was an easier living than they'd ever made. So we have relatives in the form of the Davis boys, we're 4 cousins, and our great-grandfather worked in the mines, in the saltpeter mines at Mammoth Cave, because his dad had died and his mother needed help, so he went to work in the saltpeter mines. And I had six members of my family have been guides at Mammoth Cave, 7 and 8, counting my dad and me. Most of my life has been spent here, except for 4 years I was in the Air Force. And all my working years, it had something to do with Mammoth Cave. And I'm proud that some of my kids followed me. My daughter's here today. And it's just a wonderful place. And what we have done here is to try to save a little piece of it in the form of this stagecoach that we see sitting out here. The L&M Railroad played a big part in this because it started running from Louisville to Nashville, and I think it was 1858 or something like that. And the roads were rough back then, and they had to get here the best way they could, but fortunately, they were able to ride the train to the Cave City or Park City. In Park City, there was a tavern inn there. It was well known, and like I said about Jenny Lynn, but she sat and sang in Jenny Lynn's chair down in the old part of the cave here. And she spent the night over at Park City in the hotel over there. So we're glad to see that we were able to bring a part of the history back to this area. In fact, we wouldn't have quit if we could have got a little more help than that. Because Because I had the idea of bringing the chaperone up the Green River, parking it out by the train up there. That's true. Packet boats ran from Evansville, Indiana through Bowling Green. And I think it was 1906 when it started coming here by packet boat up the Green River. And, that ran until 1916. And then first automobile, this is 1904. 1904 Buick, driven by a banker out of, I think, Cleveland or somewhere. And that was the beginning, I guess, of the demise of the stagecoaches, because they improved the roads then and all of this. But the main thing is the people, the camaraderie, and the, I don't know what else to say. It was family. The 600 people that left here, they were still family. Most of them, a lot of them came back. A lot of them visited every year. We had what's called the 4th of July celebration. They would come back from Iowa, Illinois, all those places in the West where they moved, because a lot of them were farmers, knew agriculture, so they moved when they left here and went out there. But they always wanted to come back, and many of them did. And I spent over half my life here at Mammoth Cave, working here. I started working for my grandfather when I was 12 years old in a photo shop, and then I worked as a photographer, a full photographer, when I was 14 during the summer months when I went to school. So I always come back. I hope that my family will continue to do that. I'm not a great speaker like some of them are, although I made my living over half my life doing that. I told Greg a while ago that I was looking around. This group here would have made a good all-day trip. We used to have to split that through. I've seen over 700 people go through the Mammoth Cave entrance and come out up at the frozen water. To get there, we had to paddle the boats across the Echo River. And that wasn't an easy feat for some people, but it didn't bother them too much. But then, like Julie said, a lot of her family, my family, and others, they did a lot of exploring, even when they're all the time. So it meant a lot to them. It still means a lot to their families. Other than that, that's about all I can say. That I'm just glad to be here. I'm 91 years old. I hope I'm going to make about that many more.
Thank you, Lewis, for always educating us on life growing up in Mammoth Cave. Those are always great discussions to have with you, and we appreciate everything that you say. And again, yes, you're correct. The families that were displaced here, it's good to come home. Absolutely. We're so honored today to have as our main speaker a very distinguished gentleman. He needs very little introduction, as he is very engaged in our community and has always been a friend to the association. He has listened to our concerns and issues related to Mammoth Cave. It is my honor to introduce our 2nd District Congressman, Greg Guthrie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of you here, and Superintendent, your staff, your rangers, everybody that works at the National Park Service. We're so proud of all of them in the National Park, the Mammoth Cave National Park Association. What your ancestors did is left you guys, and what they'll be the most proud of all this, is they left you guys the love of this place and the sense of place, and you know where you come from and the history of this place. And that's important. It was fun. I actually got to ride on the Stagecoach. It was like smoother than I thought. I'm sure they didn't have asphalt back in the 1880s or 90s, but it was nice. So I got to actually come here on horsepower, but we weren't coming fast enough to worry about the Rangers. But I'm glad the Rangers were there because we didn't have to worry about the Frank and Jesse James of the world either. So just imagine that era of when people lived. It just seems so long ago. And I was thinking, you know, the 1880s, 1890s, I knew 3 great-grandparents that were born in the 1888, 1884, and one born in 1894, died in 1980. So I was 16 when I got to know. And so when this world was happening, some of us older people, my age, maybe a little older than me, if you're here, if you're older than me, don't appear to be, but if you are, you knew people that this was the way that they got around the country, around the world. Most people didn't go many places. They just kind of stayed around their place. That's why they had such a great love of place. It's important that we do this. And I'll say, when I first got to Washington, there's a guy named Don Young. I wish I could describe him, but he was Alaska representative. And if you could describe an Alaska mountain person, it was him. And I remember I was Alaska in the Army, and I was talking about Alaska as I loved when I was up there, and I said something about most of Alaska's government land. And he grabbed me by the arm. He's pretty intimidating. If you read John Boehner's book, he's the one that pulled the Bowie knife on him when Boehner tried to get him to vote for somebody he won't vote for. That's the kind of guy he was. So he grabs him by the arm. He goes, "Listen here, young man." He goes, "It's not government land, it's public land." So I've learned that I always call anything owned by the federal government public land, because if it is owned by the federal, it's not owned by the federal government, it's owned by you, it's owned by us, it's owned by all of us. And so the question is, how do we preserve these things, and what do we preserve for people to have in the future? I was just in Glendale this morning, driving back. I mean, that beautiful little town, but look at the 4,000 jobs coming there. It's changing the complexity of that, and that has to happen, and that does happen. But there's some things that we absolutely have to preserve and hold on to. And so, you look at the National Park Service, and I'll tell you, we have a fantastic administration, but there are a lot of people that think national parks exist to preserve just the geography. So a friend of mine was Secretary of the Interior named Ron Zinke, and he said, people would really believe that you ought to just shut this off, keep people away from it, and only scientists can come and study the fish or the wildlife here. Matter of fact, it's funny, the wildlife here. I'm a national park person, so my wife and I travel around, so we always buy our grandchildren a little animal of what we see. We bought a buffalo, we're in Yellowstone, bought a little buffalo, saw a bobcat in Yosemite, bought a bobcat, we saw a moose in the Grand Tetons, have a little moose, and I walk in here, you can buy a possum here. So that's pretty cool. You actually can buy a little possum here. So I'm going to probably get one of those before we go back. I didn't see it today, but I've seen one here. But it's just, to preserve these things, and some people think they just should be like Yellowstone. You just wall it off. You got all these geographical things to just let scientists study it, because the public messes it up. Because, you know, if you want to see Mammoth Cave in its natural beauty, you wouldn't have this natural beautiful. I know all of us have worked hard on getting this way that it needs to look, and so the other side is it should be open for tourists. I think it's a mix. It's a mix. And then you get within the Park Service, they're historic parks. So we have in Kentucky, you can go right up the road and go to Abraham Lincoln's birthplace. That is there as a historic site. And so I was in the Badlands. They sent me to dress in costume. All I had was a Teddy Roosevelt hat. But I was in the Badlands, and he was a farmer in the Badlands and took longhorn cattle there. And they made that a national park now, the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. And they wanted to get rid of all the longhorn cattle there because they weren't native. And they said, wait a minute, we're preserving this because Teddy Roosevelt was here. He brought them here. Now maybe they are native. So the question is, they also have a historic mission, is what they said. We want things to look like they would look on prehistoric times. But also not just prehistoric mission, we have historic mission. And there's nothing more important than the transportation and the travel and the way that people get here, because it's just important that we have that. And so it is great that the Mammoth Cave Park Association, the Hanson family, everybody came up together to the funds to do this. Because restoring, there's not many people out there that can fix these things, right, can restore, so it's not cheap. But thanks for the Park Service to work with everybody to build a facility where people can see it. Because you see the train cars outside, you can see those, you can see the Stagecoach, and it's pristine. And people need to know the beauty of their land, and they need to know the history around it. And that's what the Park Service does. That's why I'm an avid supporter of our National Park Service. And it makes it easy when you have leadership like our superintendent here, and easy when you have citizens who dedicate their time, effort, and money to doing it, which we have the National Park Association. So congratulate you all, but congratulate everybody, because this is public land, and thank you so much for supporting it. Thank you very much.
Association, we thank you for your comments today and compliment you and your staff. I know Mark is with us today, for always leaning ear to our concerns. Thank you so much. As we prepare to conclude the homecoming for the Stagecoach, there are several people or entities that the association would like to offer our sincere thanks. President Lee Davis, and again, I think Lee is still on the Stagecoach. Without his years of guidance and willingness to see the project through, none of this would be happening today. Thank you for your devotion to the association and personally being one of my mentors. A special thanks to Mr. Simmons, who is also on the Stagecoach, and his team of horses for providing the necessary provisions to move our Stagecoach on its historic trips over the years, and to all the other support members that have to accompany that process, and that truly makes our trip safe and successful. Again, thank you to Mr. Simmons and his team. To our moving services, believe it or not, we don't move this by a team everywhere we go. We have depended on Cars and Trucks or Us, to David Stiffy, and to Crossroads Towing, Clifton and Joyce Parsley. Each of you have provided the association a safe means of transporting the Stagecoach to our various venues. Your services and staff have greatly been appreciated. To our housing partners, first to Lee, for allowing us to use his barn for a much longer time than we intended to protect the Stagecoach from the elements. A special thank you to Terry Bunnell and his outreach to the Corvette Museum, which was able to display the Stagecoach during its transportation exhibit. And finally to Gordon Smith in the Mammoth Cave Museum. Gordon and his team stepped up and provided the Stagecoach a home for several years. It was a pleasure to work with you and your staff, Gordon, and thank you so much for taking care of the Stagecoach for so many years. A large thank you to Michelle Wright. Michelle helped us coordinate our efforts to promote the historic homecoming for the Stagecoach, and her efforts to document its history, which will be enjoyed by many. Thank you, Michelle. And finally, to the members of the association, we began this journey together in 2015, and our ultimate goal was to have the Stagecoach on display in Mammoth Cave for everyone to see and enjoy. This took the association making a commitment to preserve and document a piece of history, and today we have accomplished our goal. The McCoy Stagecoach Homecoming, the return of a time gone by that was used to bring visitors to Mammoth Cave, the People's Park. And I firmly believe that not only the past members of the association will be pleased with our efforts, but that the members of the displaced families are enjoying the return of a piece of their history to Mammoth Cave. Would members of the association, our board, and officers raise your hands so that we can recognize you and show appreciation for you and your commitment to this project. I need to add, and I didn't have this in my comments, but today Alan Bird has worked diligently to have some available information that promotes and tells you about the Mammoth Cave National Park Association. We have some flyers that are available, and we have developed a commemorative coin that will be available, and we can do that through our website. So just see me or Alan after we dismiss. And again, Alan, thank you for all your work. He's over here to my left. So thank you, Alan. With those closing words, this concludes our ceremony celebrating the historic return of the Stagecoach to Mammoth Cave. We thank you for your attendance. Time will again be allowed for pictures to be taken with the Stagecoach. But again, we ask you to please be careful and listen to any directions given by folks there, since we still have these horses there, the team hooked up. Our members of the association are asked to remain once the horses are removed from the area, as we will have the roll-in of the Stagecoach to the lodge. Again, thank you for your attendance today.
Yeah, Yeah, and how cool was that? I hope you enjoyed that. I sure did. Enjoyed those presentations. That one fellow was born, I think he said in 1931, and had worked at the park. Also enjoyed hearing about, I was glad they talked about the families that were displaced when they kind of established the park. I enjoyed hearing from the superintendent, and I also especially enjoyed hearing from Brett Guthrie, representative for Kentucky 2nd District. Just a nice guy. I chatted with him a little bit after this event, and he just, he just came off as a really, really nice person. I try not to get political, but I really appreciated him. And and the superintendent, and of course the association that did all the restoration, got this restoration stuff done. The horses, I believe, were from Jesse James Riding Stables. I put up another video about those guys not too long ago. And we're leaving. They actually would get they would take the Stagecoach little side window area for it to be displayed. And real quick, we're at Mammoth Cave. You always see a deer at Mammoth Cave, and that guy is just hanging out. Man, how tame is he? Anyway, let me know if you've seen the Stagecoach. Let me know if you were there. I thought this was a really cool event.